Let's get to the important news.
Tunnels.
All right, so in Crown Heights, police somehow stumbled on a network of tunnels built underneath a historic synagogue there in the Orthodox community. And there are a couple of theories about what was going on here. If we have this first element that we can throw up here. This is footage of mayhem that broke out after the police were like, look, you can't just be digging massive tunnels underneath the synagogue.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have to clear this out. They refused to clear out, and so as you can see in the video, they handcuffed using those little plastic cuffs the first person that was stuck in the tunnel, and that's when all hell broke loose, and the congregants started fighting back.
Yep.
And you see a little bit of pepper spray type stuff getting doused, and then you see people start to rip the wooden walls off the side of the synagogue, and here's footage of the tunnels themselves, which are go down underneath, and then it seems like well, anyway, let's get into the theories about what's going on. So there's two theories. One, some kids run amok. I want to hear the kids run amok theory is great. It's like some teenagers were told not to do this, and you know how kids today are.
Kids these days,
and they just went ahead and dug these tunnels.
This is from Libs of TikTok. This is a tweet sort of saying, Gen Z was taught that nothing is more important than their feelings, and now they're emboldened to act entitled and spoiled with zero regard or respect for others. We keep seeing this time and again in all our institutions. We must fix the broken education system. The future of our country depends on it. And this is her saying the disgraceful teens, this is how she starts, who dug underneath a well-respected synagogue, did so on their own after being explicitly told not to. They went against synagogue leadership. And so, yes, Ryan, that is one of the theories.
Wokeness. These are woke tunnels.
See, that's not so much wokeness as it is
just generationally Gen Z.
Kids these days.
Their phones and their TikToks and their.
So this went massively viral on TikTok. A lot of this, when the tunnel videos first started cropping up, massive virality on social media, especially on TikTok. So the theory.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say.
It's so absurd, but let's address it first.
So either way, one thing we do know is that the tunnels weren't just being dug by some bored kids for the hell of it, right? Like it wasn't just, a screw you to authorities. This is a fairly, Rolling Stone describes it as quotidian, but a fairly serious dispute, internecine dispute among different sects. In Crown Heights. So in reality, the explanation for the tunnels was at least somewhat more quotidian, Rolling Stone writes. The tunnels were the result of an ongoing dispute between the Chabad Lubavitch community and a more extremist splinter sect, which has long been embroiled in turmoil over ownership of the building that is housing the headquarters. Members of the splinter group believe that the Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, who led the Chabad Lubavitch movement before his death at the age of 92,
his alleged death
in 1994, is the Messiah. And that is a claim that the mainstream Chabad movement rejects. And so this had started happening.
The extremists believe that he's still alive, and wants them to do this, basically, right?
It's crazy. I mean, it's a crazy, crazy story. And so Rolling Stone goes on to say in 2006, a court determined that the mainstream Chabad Lubavitch community had control over the building. So it's located on the Eastern Parkway in Brooklyn's heavily Hasidic Crown Heights, as Rolling Stone says. Yet there has still been tension between the two groups for all of this time, with the newspaper The Jewish Chronicle reporting today that about 6 months ago, a small group of members from the Messianic movement started construction on a network of underground tunnels in order to gain illegal access to the building. So 6 months ago. And this was, there were some of those videos that were popping up about a month ago. Maybe a little longer ago than that, actually, and it sort of stayed a local story.
Of people popping out of the street?
Just people.
Do we have that one while we're chatting?
We do have more VO here that we can roll. This is the next element that we can put up on the screen, just so you can sort of start to see what this looked like. And I'll read more here from Rolling Stone. They say, at first, the internecine dispute between what is essentially two small sects of the already small Crown Heights Orthodox Jewish community primarily garnered only local media interest. The mainstream Chabad Lubavitch community also immediately made it clear that it did not endorse the tunnels, with Chairman Rabbi Yehuda Krinsky issuing a statement saying the Chabad Lubavitch community is pained by the vandalism of a group of young agitators who damaged the synagogue below Chabad headquarters, and he called their actions odious. Now, Ryan, Rolling Stone also notes that this started taking off when conspiracy theories that are pretty obviously anti-Semitic about satanic ritualistic sex abuse from kind of QAnon-adjacent accounts started to spread, and was maybe the fuel that took this from a local news story to a national one.
But also the image of the guy walking out of the sidewalk. If you're listening to this on the podcast, we're playing the clip of this guy that went viral, the big old hat, climbing basically through a grate, out of the sidewalk onto the street, and then walking off. And just imagine you're walking down the street and you see that and try to describe it later to friends.
Listen.
Like, you won't believe what I saw today.
Right. Well, there was that guy on Twitter saying he was hearing people speak Yiddish, and he lived
under the sidewalk or something.
Well, he said, I live in like a ground floor apartment building, and there's nothing. He's like, I have no explanation for it. I don't know if that guy lived in Crown Heights, but that tweet started going viral too. Again, I actually don't think the anti-Semitic conspiracy theories are what made this story viral. I think this story went viral because it's absolutely insane.
Because it's crazy.
It's a crazy story. It's a crazy story.
But people love New York too.
Yes.
The Italian cop talking to the dudes before all hell pops up. Maybe we can add some of that in post. That was just a great classic New York clip too, where he's like,
Perfect.
He's like, what are you guys doing here? You can't just do this.
He says something like, "This is America."
I'm gonna have to clear the whole showl. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we got to fix this by tonight.
Yeah.
Because also there are real concerns now that there's significant structural damage.
Right.
Like you can't just take sledgehammers to underneath historic buildings and not have some concern.
Yeah.
Not to be the structural engineer guy who's like insisting on everything being done by the book. But come on, guys, gravity's a thing.
No, seriously, and like as often as I have some like libertarian impulses on these domestic questions, for example, there's a woman in Herndon who's gone viral on TikTok for digging a tunnel underneath her own house, more for the hell of it. But she has some like sort of explanation that actually might be well described as quotidian, probably a better description there. But she is like now being investigated by the city. And again, even as somebody with libertarian impulses, it's like you can see in some of these videos, there's a house not far away from her. So if you don't know what you're doing, you can cause other people's property to collapse. You can make it unsafe.
Your freedom to dig a tunnel ends underneath my property.
Yes.
I think would be a fair libertarian.
Yes. Or near enough to my property that you're damaging my property. Yeah.
Libertarians are all about their own property rights too.
Yeah, to an extent. It just depends.
Some of them,
we don't need to get into it probably. But again, at its heart, what is a crazy dispute comes down to a Messianic sect of Judaism, which again, those questions of the Jewish Messiah loom very heavily over the conflict over the West Bank. And over that land in particular. So this stuff, this is a sort of silly embodiment or manifestation of it, but these are ancient questions that mean a lot to people. To the point where they will dig tunnels under Crown Heights.
And it popped onto the House floor, if you remember, when Republicans did push a resolution that said specifically, like, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. And Jerry Nadler, who represents some Orthodox communities in New York, went to the House floor and said, this is absurd for many, many reasons, but one particular reason it's absurd is that I have anti-Zionist constituents who believe that you cannot bring Israel, that humans cannot bring Israel onto the earth. Yeah. Only the Messiah can bring Israel onto the earth.
Right.
And that is their interpretation. How dare you call them anti-Semitic for that anti-Zionist interpretation?
Right. Well, I mean, I just celebrated Christmas, the birth of the Messiah.
Although this one particular sect not exactly covering itself in glory in this moment.
No, covering itself in a lot of dirt.
In a lot of dirt.
A lot of dirt. But no, I mean, the questions of the Messiah are so central to like not just Israeli culture and politics, but Western culture. Again, like we just celebrated Christmas in this country. For Christians, it's about the Messiah. Again, ancient questions that mean a lot to people, that they're willing to actually lay down their lives in the Middle East right now is what we're seeing, and dig tunnels in other cases if they're in Crown Heights.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.